The for sale sign had barely come down before I started unpacking the moving truck. After months of house hunting, I was thrilled to finally call this little blue Victorian my own. It was a bit run down, but I saw potential in the wraparound porch and antique stained glass windows. This was my dream home. If only someone had warned me about its dark past. The process of buying the house had gone smoothly. My realtor, Diane, raved about what a great deal it was. Perched on a sprawling hillside property backing up to woods with a creek running through, it was private, peaceful perfection. She said it was a hot commodity that wouldn't last long, and she was right. Within days of it going on the market, my offer was accepted. I was too distracted with the move to notice Diane's evasiveness whenever I pressed for details on previous owners. "Oh, you know, families come and go," she'd say with a dismissive wave. Or she'd abruptly change the subject, making a show of checking her buzzing phone. I realized now she was hiding something, but in my excited nesting mode, I didn't probe further. The first night in my new home, I was kept awake by noises, creaks and groans, banging pipes, floorboards creaking so loudly below my bed it sounded like footsteps. My anxious mind explained it away as an old house settling. When the specter of a little boy flashed across my doorway, I convinced myself it was a trick of the shadows. But the next day, an unsettled feeling clung to me. As I unpacked more boxes, I noticed a musty smell coming from the basement. I opened the door, peering down into the inky blackness below. The hairs on my neck stood up and I slammed it shut. That night I clearly heard the giggles of a child and the scrapes of metal dragging across the floor. Terror jolted me awake. My hands shook as I called Diane the next morning, demanding to know what she wasn't telling me. She hesitated, mumbling vague statements about checking her paperwork. I could tell she was stalling. Finally, she relented with a heavy sigh. "Look, the reason I didn't say anything is because these things usually don't bother people after some time passes." She took a breath before continuing. "Over the years, there has been quite a bit of misfortune associated with that property." Diane explained that the Victorian originally belonged to a wealthy family in the 1920s. They employed a housekeeper named Martha, who looked after their 3 children. Martha was extremely devoted to the family, having moved across the country to work for them, leaving her own family behind. One cold January night, the pipes froze and burst. The children awoke to rising water, quickly flooding the basement playroom where they slept. Their screams reverberated through the house as the water rapidly filled the space. The parents were unable to open the stuck door in time. All 3 children drowned, trapped in an icy underwater grave. Martha was destroyed with grief, blaming herself for not protecting them. The devastated parents wanted no reminders of their loss and dismissed Martha days later. A month after the tragedy, Martha's body was found in the woods behind the house, an empty bottle of pills next to her. Over the ensuing decades, more misfortunes struck. In the 1950s, a newlywed couple purchased the home soon after saying their I-dos. Less than a year into their marriage, the husband grew suspicious about his wife's frequent trips to town. One night he followed her and caught her sneaking into a hotel with another man. Blind with rage, he murdered her that very night. Diane's voice dropped as she recounted the next chapter. In the 1970s, a notorious serial killer had dumped at least 3 bodies on the secluded property. More may have gone undiscovered in the dense woods. By the time she finished, the truth had sunk like a stone in my gut. This idyllic family home had a monstrous history that I was now part of. I wanted to flee and sell it immediately, but Diane assured me not to make any rash moves. The market was not in my favor, and the past was the past. "Hang on to the house a little longer," she advised, "and I'd soon get over the heebie-jeebies." Her nonchalant response infuriated me. I felt betrayed that she had kept this from me until after I closed. That night, I jumped at every sound, hearing the echoes of this house's tortured past. Shadowy figures darted swiftly when I turned my head. Cries and whispers swirled around me. The next morning, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I called a priest to bless the house, hoping it would cleanse the lingering evil within these walls. He walked silently from room to room, sprinkling holy water as he murmured prayers. It seemed to work, for a while. A couple of weeks later, the activity started again. In the middle of the night, my covers were ripped off my bed by invisible hands. Heavy footsteps thudded up the basement stairs, stopping outside my room. I used every ounce of courage to leap out of bed and turn the lock on my door. As the knob violently jiggled, I slipped into panicked tears, pushing a dresser against the door for good measure. Things escalated quickly after that. Doors slamming, objects flying across rooms, sinister voices whispering my name. I couldn't eat or sleep, losing 10 pounds in a week. I decided I had to take control and fight back. I refused to be pushed out of my own home. Late one rainy night, as a howling wind lashed the shutters, I descended into the basement, a shovel in hand. I would dig up the stone floor, expose the dirt, and salt the earth so nothing evil could thrive in it again. As I drove the shovel into the first spray of stony grit, a wailing filled the house, like 100 lost souls crying out in anguish. My knees buckled, but I forced myself to continue digging, desperate to remove the deep roots of darkness in this place. When I had unearthed several piles of dirt, I poured a circle of salt around myself and waited, exhausted and trembling. The house fell eerily silent. Had I succeeded? The stillness felt like a held breath. I had just started to exhale in relief when the wooden stairs creaked behind me. Spinning around, I saw the faint outline of a woman slowly making her way down, one deliberate step at a time. As she came into view, her features materialized. A gaunt face, hollow eyes, moth-eaten maid's uniform hanging from her frail form. Martha. Terror gripped my heart as she glared at me with otherworldly wrath. Her lips pulled back in a monstrous skeletal grin as she hissed my name, bone fingers outstretched. As she passed through the salt, she let out an unearthly shriek like rattling metal. I bolted, stumbling blindly up the stairs just as her icy fingers grazed the back of my neck. I burst through the cellar door, slamming it shut and piling everything I could in front of it, using shelves, chairs, and even the kitchen table. As I did, angry fists pounded the door from the other side, making it bulge and crack. Defeated, I called Diane and told her I was finally ready to sell. I didn't care that I'd be taking a loss. I needed out immediately. She sympathized with my plight but insisted I stay just a little longer. She was sure she could get me more for the house. In a quiet, measured tone, like she was taming a wild animal, she soothed me into agreeing to one final week. From the basement came an inhuman roar as the spirits of this house rose up in a vengeful rage. The walls trembled, windows shattered, furniture levitated and whipped violently around the rooms. A maelstrom of angry energy seeking justice for forgotten sins. As the sun rose the next morning, an exhausted calm settled over the house. I walked through the rooms in despair at the destruction. Overturned furniture, shattered glass, claw marks gouged into the walls. The contents of the house now strewn into disarray, reflecting the chaos inside. So here I stay, sheltered in my bedroom, a chair pressed up against the door handle. There are 4 more nights until the listing goes up. 4 more nights until hope is restored that I will soon escape this place. I lay awake listening to the walls vibrate with unseen energy, rapid whispers like moving air all around. I should have trusted my instincts when this house first gave me chills. I shouldn't need Diane to tell me it's time to get away. But for 4 more nights, I am trapped in its embrace, wondering which evil spirit will come for me next. The little boy seeking comfort, the enraged husband searching for revenge, or Martha herself, determined to never let me leave alive. All I know is that when the sun rises next Tuesday, Diane better have that for sale sign outside first thing, or I cannot be held accountable for what I do next. This tortured house demands one final sacrifice before it lets me go. And if Diane won't take my side and get me out of here, I know who I'll give to this house.